It's the Tuesday edition of Business Morning. Good morning and welcome to the program. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago. The second quarter GDP numbers released on Monday, no doubt, is an eye-opener to the extent the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the Nigerian economy. The second quarter GDP decline was largely attributed to significantly lower levels of both domestic and international economic activity during the quarter, which resulted from nationwide shutdown efforts aimed at containing the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the domestic efforts ranged from initial restrictions of human and vehicular movement implemented in only few states to a nationwide curfew, bans on domestic and international travel, closure of schools and markets, and so on, affecting both local and international trade. All these culminated to the negative growth rate that we saw in the second quarter. The transportation and storage sector happens to record the highest decline, growing by minus 49.23% in that quarter year on year. And then quarter on quarter growth was minus 60.02%. Well, to speak more to this, I'm being joined by a trade logistics specialist and investment lawyer, Dr. Ikenna Nwosu. Good morning, Dr. Nwosu. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Our transportation sector is, one of the sectors with the highest contraction in second quarter. All the 6 activities in that sector, road transport, air, water, postal, and courier services, and so on, all contracted. Did this come to you as a surprise, really?
Chimeze, it doesn't come to me as a surprise as an economic operator in the country. We are very, very satisfied with the level of the negative growth written out in the NBS report that was released yesterday, lending credence to the economic sustainability plan of the president, which has been implemented. Transport took a major hit. I mean, the total was about negative, about minus 41.63%. Across all the 6 sectors. I think the rail had the highest, minus 61, followed by air and then water. Now, partly because the water sector, you would say, had containers coming in during the lockdown. Now, but what you find out is that the transport sector worldwide, particularly air, was the hardest hit. Because you have over 7,000 aeroplanes grounded worldwide, and Nigeria is not an exception. And then with the closure of international borders, and mind you, Nigeria's own borders were closed, land borders were closed even before the COVID-19 setting, where we had issues in ECOWAS over trade smuggling and all that. So the cumulative effect, it didn't surprise us. You find that tourism was the next hardest hit sector because air travel also is the main enabler for tourism. So until after the 39 days of the interstate border closure, the lockdown, we still had a lot of restriction on movement. So when the NBS report came out and we studied it, it didn't come to us as a surprise. And incidentally, we actually expected more negative on the roadside than what we saw. Because up till date, by the time the quarter 3 report comes out, you're still going to have some negative growth because all the land transport, air transportation services are being operated at 50% capacity, if you note that. Now, beyond that, in the logistics sector, it is important to note that the negative growth we are having in the transportation sector is not only because of the COVID-19 situation. I have earlier mentioned that the border closures affected land transports in and out of Nigeria across all land borders, which is our neighboring countries. In addition to that, the logistics nightmare you have at the Apapa and Tinkan Island ports, and the logistics nightmare you also have at Ones Seaport, Obibo area, it's affecting land transportation for trade logistics. So it has all that cumulatively affects the flow of transportation. The services of the transport sector have been withdrawn severally because of the difficulties they have. So when all these statistics are added up by the MBS, we expected even more of a negative growth in the land road transport sector. Now, beyond trade logistics, human movements within the country, we are experiencing a situation where there may be, between local governments, between state governments, there may be interspersed lockdowns going forward. The transport sector's contribution to GDP in Q2 was 0.75%, which is not what we expected. We even expected it to be a bit lower. But in Q3, it's likely going to rise a bit. But going forward, there are still likely going to be pockets of restrictions in some other states and in local governments if there is a breakout. Like in Anambra State, about a month back, you had Oyi local government and Oka under some sort of lockdown. So we are still going to be seeing some negative growth going forward in regard to the transportation sector. I'd like to add this new information. 2 days ago, 48 hours ago, Maersk, a report was released by Maersk that downgraded Nigeria's office, their Nigerian office, to just an office. It's no more a hub. It used to be the hub. Nigeria used to be the hub for cargo movement in West Africa. If we've lost that to Cote d'Ivoire, we used to be the transit point for landlocked countries like Niger Republic and Chad for moving their cargo. That also is not happening. So you find that even the additional inflow of transport and outflow that will have gone to the landlocked countries, as well as the additional flow of transportation that will have happened if we are the hub for cargo in the region, those are also indices that join together in the calculation by MBS, I believe, for them to arrive at the negative growth we have in the transport sector. So it is very, very important for economic operators to note that it is not just the lockdown situation that led to this negative growth. There are other factors pre-COVID-19 that have led to that. And it behoves now the federal government, particularly the Office of the President, to take the bull by the horn. Because if we are recording this negative growth, the necessary steps that need to be taken to open up our borders for movement of goods in and out need to take place. And I will give you one compelling reason why. Nigeria has an international commitment for ACTFA. We were reluctant initially. We were the 53rd of the 54 countries that have signed it. Now, the commencement of operation of ACTFA, even though the 22nd country signed it, Eritrea, for it to take effect, its effective date was postponed because of COVID-19. Now, it envisages economic integration based on the free movement of goods, services, and funds. So if we have that international commitment, in addition to the ETLS commitment in the West African region, then it behoves us that we are going to be losing more on transportation, on goods free movement, if we do not hurry up to open our land borders so that we are able to have the free flow of goods and services. And when the global air borders open and we're able to get in air cargo coming, you find that because we have not fully developed the West African air route, a lot of the multinationals who move their cargo by road to West African countries have not been able to do that for most of this year. So we are losing, even on the manufacturing side, on the export side, as a result of the negative growth in transport. So apart from our domestic commitments, our international commitments, regionally and continentally, are affected by the negative growth in transport. So part of it is self-inflicted, and we need to make concise efforts in that regard. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Wonsu, yes, you did mention that those numbers didn't come to you as a surprise, and that in fact, you expected more than that, but thanks to the economic sustainability plans of the government. Just wondering, what exactly were the measures or sort of palliative that may have supported your sector that we're now seeing, well, even though that sector recorded the highest negative growth, but it was, for you, moderate compared to what you would have expected?
We expected not less than 50 to 55% negative growth as a minimum, because Nigeria did not even start her lockdown early. A number of countries started lockdown earlier than we did. And our lockdown, if I'm not wrong, was basically 39 days. So considering that the transportation sector, particularly land had restrictions before COVID, rail had restrictions because of banditry along the rail routes. The sea sector had constrictions because the congestion that occurred in the seaports during the COVID, even before COVID, we are still there, that led to longer dwell time of vessels waiting to offload cargo. And it has worsened now because the ports are largely congested with goods that came during the lockdown. And the water transportation sector for human movement within states and interstate was not, before COVID, was not experiencing any major increase. And you find that because of these factors pre-COVID, we expected that the negative growth should have been 50% and above. But perhaps there were other factors the National Bureau of Statistics took into consideration. For posts and courier, they didn't completely stop their services during COVID because the federal government allowed some sectors to be regarded as vital, including posts, and some categories of goods were coming also by air as trade goods. So those were allowed to come in. So posts and courier, even though they were impacted in a way to the extent that you are not getting normal 24 hours delivery, but the impact is still there now. Palliatives-wise, I haven't seen a package, I haven't heard of or read of any particular incentive package or palliative package from the federal government, whether from the ministry or the presidency, regarding the transport sector. Perhaps because the federal transport sector was, let's say the maritime side was still operating at the time, but not at full capacity. But if the air transport sector, subsector of transport, is getting palliatives as we heard, what of the other sectors? Why are they not getting? Beyond palliatives, Chimeze, beyond palliatives, the pre-COVID cause of congestion in the access roads to the seaports, all the seaports in this country, that problem is so embarrassing to Nigeria that it's like we are shooting ourselves in the foot as if we are sabotaging our own economy ourselves. How can the access roads to every seaport in this country is not optimal? Not one. Is it Apapa? Is it Tinkan? Is it One? Not one. So, beyond palliatives, let us do what is the right thing, and in that sector, you may not even need the palliatives. However, a number of truck owners, the associations, have called for palliatives to their own subsector in the transport industry because many of them operated below capacity during the COVID lockdown. And what we will be expecting to see will be the Ministry of Aviation and the Ministry of Transportation, where you have two ministers, come together, sit with the Economic Sustainability Committee and the Presidential Task Force on COVID, and come out with the policy framework for palliating that sector and all the subsectors under it. Posts and courier is under the Postmaster General of the Federation, and that's another thing under communication. So it's an interministerial committee that needs to come together to put in palliatives for the sector, because that sector is a key enabler for several other sectors in the country. And remember, our domestic, our regional, and our continental commitments are impacted by this negative growth.
Yeah, now talking about the courier now, in the last a few weeks, NIPOST has attempted to regulate courier subsector reforms. Is that a decision that could make or mar that sector?
You use the right phrase. It could make or it could mar. I am aware that the Association of Courier Companies have raised the hue and the cry. They've escalated the matter, and they've come together, had an engagement, stakeholder engagement, and they've communicated their views, their objections to the new regulatory releases by their regulator. You don't, I mean, you don't regulate without stakeholder engagement. It's always better, apart from having the global best practice regulation processes, it is always important to speak with the people you are regulating. Because a bottoms-up approach, a dialogue to a design approach, is the best practice in stakeholder engagement. But the Courier regulator defined the problems by itself, defined the solutions by itself, and brought out the regulations, and then you are drumming it down the throat of the regulators. And so you get with the pushback you are getting, you expect it. So first they're complaining of the high rates, that's one. And again, they are complaining that the courier companies, particularly the DHS, the FedExes, the UPS, are complaining that they were not consulted. If they were, they would have made better inputs into it. So while we are busy grappling with current COVID impact and the negative growth, what we are having from the regulator of Post and Courier is further going to record negative growth in that industry. Mark my word.
Okay, now, Dr.
Because it will be disastrous if the operators in that sector decide to withdraw their services. You know what impact that will have.
All right, before I let you go, Dr. Nwosu, a quick one. What are the recovery prospects for the transportation sector?
Very bright, but it's going to be gradual. It's a quantitative easing process, particularly for air. Domestic is open, air travel, but 50% capacity for the flights. International, I heard August 29th, the task force says it may be longer. When it opens, there will also be restrictions. So it's going to be a quantitative easing process for air. On the sea side, a lot of Nigerian cargo is out there, outside the world, outside Nigeria, all over the world, wanting to come in. So we're going to have a deluge of cargo because we are in Q3. So I see also sea transportation rising. Now, rail transportation is also going to record a lot of increase because many people prefer it as an option against road because of the bad roads and the security situation in the country. In Lagos State, water transportation recorded almost triple the percentage because of the coronavirus situation and the traffic, the third mainland closure, the bad roads, the construction work. So in all sectors, I'm seeing an increase a likely increase in their volumes. In the third quarter, ensuring, I still say it's conditional, ensuring that while the quantitative easing is taking place, those pre-COVID situations that negatively impacted the various transport sector need to be taken care of. And if I may add, both FEMA and the Federal Ministry of Transportation need to work on the country's road networks, particularly interstate road network, in order to improve land transportation. Because a lot of people, look at the Kaduna-Abuja road, a lot of the people are preferring other modes of transport. And the opening of the Enugu airport as soon as possible, which was closed pre-COVID for runway repairs, needs to happen so that you see more traffic going in that direction.
All right.
And finally, I was happy to read that because of the congestion in Lagos, transportation issues, access road issues, cargo will be moved into Onitsha port via barges. Because currently we see a lot of cargo movement by barges, even from Apapa and Tenkan Port to Ikorodu Terminal, for people to take cargo. So all across, we're going to be seeing an upsurge in the sector's growth,
All right.
recovery-wise. But like I said, the pre-COVID issues that affected it, the sector, should be acted upon so that
All
we
right, thank
have
you.
a
Thank you
better
very
growth
much.
data quarter three.
Well, let's just
You're
hope
welcome.
we get it. Let's just hope we get it
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ikenna Nwosu, a trade logistics specialist and investment lawyer. Thank you for your time. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll look at the commodities market space. Just stay with us.